What this blog is about comparing the life forms from both Skull Islands, which is the 2005 Skull Island and the 2017 Skull Island, as well as Toho Studios' Monster Island. In comparing the first versions of Skull Island in 1933 and later on in 2005, you can see that Skull Island is really a gigantic, immense rainforest. Now, in contrast to the first version of Skull Island, the newer version of Skull Island, that is to say the new version of Skull Island, is much more of an environment made to contain huge titans on Kaiju level status, like Kong. And unlike the gigantic rainforest that we've seen in 1933's King Kong and 2005's Kong, the island of Skull Island, that is to say of the same name, is an island that is much larger and hilly and mountainous, unlike the rainforest version. The newer version of Skull Island even has different creatures, whereas in 1933 and 2005, Skull Island largely had a huge dinosaur population. In the 2017 version, we have animals such as the Skur Buffalo and the Skull Crawlers, and even large gigantic reptiles that are not dinosaurs. Now, when we talk about Monster Island, this is a Toho Studio version of an island that acts far more like a prison for gigantic and radioactive kaiju. And concerning some of the bizarre life forms therein, there may even be mechanized life forms such as Mechagodzilla and Mecha Kong. The more gigantic kaiju that we see within Japanese studios such as Godzilla and Gamera are far more empowered with radioactive abilities. Now, on the 2017 Skull Island, there are some creatures that seem to defy classification, some hybrids of animals such as the Holy Tiger. In contrast, when it comes to some Japanese studios, there were various versions of Godzilla or Godzillas, such as a Godzilla Raptor. In fact, Peter Jackson's 2005 King Kong was probably slated to one day fight against a Godzilla of some origin. One of the big differences between the kaiju creatures from Skull Island and Monster Island is that many have the ability to breathe fire or radiation, such as the dragons from Reign of Fire, meaning that such animals could possibly have evolved from such a place, in theory. When it comes to the Monsterverse, it's obvious that at some point in time, there was an entire biofauna that was dedicated to such strange and bizarre creatures. In many kaiju lore, it is said that these creatures have survived many climates, including hot climates, tropical climates, and of course, even the Ice Age. And concerning Megaprimatus Kong and Titanus Kong, these two apes evolved independently, and besides their size difference, they're also different in physiology. In fact, the huge differences in physiology between the kaiju makes people wonder as to how they can even communicate with one another. While some speculate that the form of communication of Camazotz, for example, is echolocation, while others will speculate that many kaiju communicate through chemical signals or possibly even through telepathy. In many other monster franchises, such as the H.R. Giger Alien franchise, the question of communication is still a mystery. Yet still, the mystery of the communication and language of kaiju may evolve from a prehistoric time. Perhaps the mystery of kaiju communication is actually rooted in the effort to actually communicate with new species. Perhaps the communication of kaiju was necessary in their fight for everlasting dominance, this between species of kaiju that are very different from one another. Now, when considering the stresses between these behemoth beasts, it would seem that communication between kaiju was definitely necessary. And considering that kaiju often invade other species' territories, communication would even be more necessary. In fact, it would seem that kaiju communication evolved as certain kaiju crossed over from their island to other islands, which in turn would make the communication of kaiju a very refined thing. It is actually more probable that most kaiju creatures and titans had probably met each other in stages of their lives when they were quite younger. Now, when considering the invasion of human territories such as large cities, it is much probable that these kaiju would fight over it for dominance. And this kaiju dominance may be fought over from the air or from the land, each battle being more vicious as they invade one another's territories and islands. This leads to certain questions that even break beyond film franchises. For example, can an Indominus Rex defeat a Skullcrawler? Kaiju are often widely generalized. Some even consider the Ohms from the Princess Nausicaa and Valley of the Wind series kaiju titans as well. And considering the jump from film franchises, the old TriStar Godzilla, which is to say the American Godzilla, is now considered an official kaiju of Toho Studios, now branded as Zilla. In part 2 of this kaiju biofauna series, we will consider and compare the very refined and complicated relationships between each species of kaiju as they continue to invade each other's franchises and territories.